twos.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
Sponsored by Wilson. We got balls.
This is going to be a punchy episode because we're recording this for those who can't tell at like 10:15 on Friday night after working all week.
I'm not trying to like press it or stress it at all, but let's get it done though. So where are we starting?
We got tonight. We're doing Renee by the Lost Boyz and God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, which will be an interesting thing because they're both love songs, sorta. Like,
I'm glad you said sort of.
Like they're not like I'll Make Love to You by Boys to Men. They're not that kind of love song. They're not like Marvin Gaye. They're not we're not talking about that kind of love song. But they do have love sorta as a subject, I guess.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, sure.
My immediate thought about both of these records when because I knew it because I know both of them well. I'm not super familiar with the Beach Boys, but I am familiar with Pet Sounds, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it's one of those albums that in the Anglo-Saxon community it gets highly revered and talked about. It has been my entire life, and usually when ranking pop/rock albums of all time, that album has been the album that breaks up whatever Beatles run of order the albums go, because it's usually like Revolver, White Album, Pet Sounds, or like Abbey Road, Sgt. Pepper's, Pet Sounds, and then another Beatles album.
And then the Dylan, I mean, that's what you got.
This album was what I like to call the Beatles album breaker album, and so I'm familiar with the work on there because of it, because it's so revered in that way, but also because of the show Big Love. Remember the show Big Love?
Mm-mm.
There was a show called Big Love about a polygamist in Utah who owned like a small version of a Walmart, kind of.
Okay.
A little get it all store, and he has 3 different wives, but they all live together, and they're in 3 separate houses on the same street, but all the backyards connect and all the kids and everything come together. But the theme music was the Beach Boys, God Only Knows.
That's a bizarre use of that song.
Yeah.
Man. Huh.
You should watch that. Go watch theme music.
Now that you've explained, now that you've said that, it's triggering. Like,
I'll probably they're like kind of like all in space and coming together and holding hands. Yeah. So you can use it for all types of love. But that's what I kind of felt about the song. This is like a free love song.
That's not how I thought of it, but we'll talk about it. We'll get there. You want to start with Renee, or you want to start with Beach Boys?
Either way, I just wanted to point out that it's like I heard the socioeconomics in these records.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I wrote there. Yeah. No.
So the tenuous nature or lack thereof kind of directs the diction and the notation of these songs, doesn't it?
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Because Renee, I
want you to go since we're sharing similar sentiments.
No, like the Renee song. It's an interesting conversation because this is one I'd never heard before. So which is the opposite experience that you had, which is that you were very familiar with both of them. So I actually wrote on here, that's fascinating you called this a love song, because it makes me think of the Black Love is Tenuous, like the thing, right? I mean, it's that
that's in my notes. This is why I say Black Love is tenuous. That's in my notes.
Because let me make sure I understand the story of this, like the actual story of the song. Like he meets a girl, they hang out for a really short time, and then she dies, and now he compares every other girl he meets to her, right? I mean, is that basically the story?
More or less, he's miserable because he can't get over losing her.
Yeah.
But here's the thing about it. He literally tells you, here's a tune about a shorty named Renee that I met one day on the way home from John Jay. Like, it's not complicated. He's literally telling you when he's starting off, it's like, I just kind of like met her randomly and she like rocked my world and turned my world upside down. You know, one of the most striking points about the song is actually when he's talking about getting the page from her mom.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, like, damn, y'all just moved and fell in love fast. You already got a relationship with mom, too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. That mom knows well and knows him well enough, or at least has got his number to
got
be
his
able to.
got his beeper number, right?
Yeah.
Like they're close enough that her mother has his
Mm-hmm.
beeper number in case something happens. So it's like, oh no, that's pretty real.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, that's one of those next level depth like feelings and emotions
Yeah.
that help express the love in the song that a word or vernacular doesn't express that type of love.
Right.
That's the way I put it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no amount of wordplay or word usage or word count
Mm-hmm.
that equates to that closeness that you recognize when he says something like that.
Yeah.
But I'm getting because Renee uses code too. But yet I'm chatting with her mom Dukes. And then she calls him by his name. She says Renee, she says Cheeks, Renee's been shot, so meet me up at St. Luke's. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
he's personalizing it. They're going by name. He's giving you a location,
Mm-hmm.
detail. Just like a great storyteller, a great writer
Exactly.
does.
It's a great story. I mean, it's a
It,
really
it's
dark
detail.
story and depressing
It's
story, but like it's still
it's
it's well
detail.
detailed. Yeah.
You know what so here's what I always compared it to.
Mm-hmm.
When this song came out, we knew each other. We were in high school together when this song came out. I always thought that this was very Edgar Allan Poe like
Okay. Talk about that.
because it's dense and it's intense
Mm-hmm.
and it's wordy without being over wordsy. Like it's like you don't hear that he's a wordsmith really
Right.
because the pain and the depression and the socioeconomics and the tenuous nature of it is what's more evident. One thing about Edgar Allan Poe is that his tone is almost greater than his wordplay. The tone on here is greater than the wordplay, and that's
I
where
see what you're saying. Yeah.
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 When you say that, the tone of his writing is greater than his actual
Yeah.
word use.
Yeah. I'm not a huge Poe fan, honestly.
Okay.
Like it's not really. Um,
I got a Poe book upstairs. I can't even front. I fucked with it. Yeah.
no, it's cool. Like I'm not mad at anybody who does. It's just not really my thing. It's just
Yeah.
um it's it's it's
He's got bars.
melodramatic is what it is.
Right. He's got bars.
He does.
He's a rapper. He's dramatic. Rappers are dramatic. That's why it's like I like it. It's like no, those are bars. He's being all extra, but like yeah.
No, he is definitely extra. I mean, like he's. I mean, and the Poe story is that like I mean, he died in a phone booth in Baltimore because syphilis rotted his brain. Like it's I mean, like it's uh, he led a dark life too.
Yeah.
Um,
And he
speaking of
like
socioeconomics,
there's some fanatical mysticism to his writing that's enchanting.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
The thing that
Especially to a young man.
oh yeah, for sure, it's a super popular thing among like high school students. That's like the
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
that
yeah.
they love because he speaks like and high schoolers are melodramatic like that
That's
they
what I
are
mean.
like
No, no.
and that's fine. That's what they're supposed to be.
He's a,
Um,
he's like a rapper. He's a big ass kid.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not saying that all rappers are big ass kids, but like it's
No, there's something about not even a rapper, just the entertainment business that allows you to exist in Never Never Land a little bit and not
mhm.
grow all the way up fully. It's like I hate to say it. It's like well, look at Michael Jackson.
That
Like
was
Michael
the obvious
Jackson.
example.
Well, also too, even Prince. Prince was young enough when he got famous and rich, and it's like Prince requests are absurd. You know what I'm saying? Think about this. He really showed up to the Grammys and told nobody not to look at him. It's
That's
like
petty.
hello,
Like why?
like hello, and he meant it. He sent a letter to people. But I need you not to look directly at me. It's, what the fuck is he talking about?
The weird man,
Right. So Edgar
genius,
Allan
but
Poe kind of like exists on that level, and you're usually drawn to that, especially in your early years, your formative years, and your early
right.
20s. Yeah.
Which tracks with this because Renee came out while we were in high school too, right?
Correct.
So
It tracks.
that
The
would have
theme,
hit the
yeah,
same kind of note.
yeah. It's very
Um,
Shakespeare, Romeo and Juliet, like
yeah.
too, like
I
in
mean,
that
and
scene.
there's even a balcony scene in the song. If we're
Yes.
going like that to me was that's actually one of my notes. Like that's one of the aspirational points because they're standing on the balcony smoking, but they're staring out at Manhattan, like across the river, basically, right? So they're like that's very like this is my life here, and this is like I mean Manhattan's the aspirational, right? I mean like it's the where all the money is and where all the whatever. So
Trying to
you're
get
like
their joy
looking at
easy
it's
on.
if you want to do full literature thing, that's like Gatsby looking across the water to the green
Yes.
light, right? I mean, it's the
Ooh.
same idea.
Ooh. Yes. See, I was thinking just in terms of black culture, they trying to be George and Wheezy and move on up to the east side.
Yep. This is that's the move on up.
Right.
Ooh.
But that's what I mean is that part of why that song connects to is that he's looking at it through the realistic lens though.
Mm,
Nah, we sitting up here chatting. We're sitting on the balcony and we're staring at Manhattan like we're not in Manhattan. We're
mm-mm.
staring at Manhattan as in
It's
like
something
nah,
far away.
something far away but close enough that we can see and put our grips on. It has that aspirational, inspirational, young kind of
Mhm.
hunger and motivation.
Yeah.
Moving on up to the east side soon, baby. Like you and me. Like that's what you tell your girl when you're in that moment on the balcony. It's like
Hmm.
it's all the things that are unsaid in that time that you're talking about. It's like, well, you know what you're telling her when y'all are looking at Manhattan. You know, you and me.
We're
We
about
can,
to go live there too. Yeah.
yeah.
Or that's where.
We can hold that. We're not gonna be living here smoking weed on this little small ass balcony no more. We're gonna have our own up there,
Yeah.
right there. You know, so it's
Hmm.
the unsaid part of it that you feel too. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the love hook of the song, really.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the even though a lot of people, especially people that look like me, don't have the experience of like looking out from a balcony across the river at Manhattan or whatever. I do understand the feeling both of like being in that new love space and talking about like what our lives are going to be like
Mm-hmm.
that's a very familiar thing to everybody. Like
Mm-hmm.
everybody does that, and
It,
everybody has like a target like that too. Like when we get that money, we're going to go do blah 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 blah, 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 right?
right.
Whatever.
So it's touching a lot of the emotional things, even the sexual or intimate parts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Started feeling on my chest. I
Yeah.
started feeling on her breast, and there's no need for me to stress the rest. You
Yeah.
know, there's something that's really beautiful and kind of like ghetto romantic about it. Well, the hook goes, "A ghetto love is the law that we live by," and so
Mm-hmm.
he's telling you that they're being intimate, but it's almost like he's showing his woman respect. By that's the least detailed part of the song. Is
Yep.
the part where they become intimate. Is where he becomes the least detailed.
Yep.
That's all he
It,
says. She started feeling on my chest. I started feeling on her breast. There's no need for me to stress the rest. As in, like that's my
like
woman.
you all
I'm
know
not
what's going on. Like you don't
right,
need.
and that's my woman also too. So I'm not about to tell y'all too much. You see a
Right.
woman who you don't respect, you'll put her business out more
Mm-hmm.
willingly. So he's letting you know. It's like, no. He, in what he say? I think he's on there talking about he hit up his man talking about, hey fam, I got a tenderoni girl. So he's feeling a certain type of way about
Mm-hmm.
her that's different than the way he normally feels about a woman. This girl's special.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so the way that he's handling, even talking about their business is different. That's what I mean. One of the beautiful things about this record
Mm-hmm.
is how it explains the unsaid things. It's like, oh, he's usually the type of guy that maybe puts a girl's business out in the street a little bit more
Yeah.
than he's doing with this one. And he's letting you know that with what he's not saying when he says stuff like
Right. And he I mean the whole song's about her. Like it's
that. Yes.
so he's got boundaries there, right? Like
Yeah.
he's saying that I mean he is telling the story of their relationship, sort of, but he's
Yes.
also keeping the private stuff private, which is
Yeah.
cool. Talk more about the ghetto love is the law that we live by line. I love that. The poetry of that's beautiful. I don't know that I 100% understand it,
You
but
know, the only thing that I can tell you is that you want to know what the way that he talks about meeting her
mm-hmm,
and the way how they got together and just kind of smoked and kicked it.
mm-hmm,
That's the way love kind of goes in the black inner city community.
okay,
And so the connective thread, I hate to express it, is kind of like the smoking of the marijuana. And so if you'll notice, it gets mentioned in the first two verses of
mm-hmm,
them smoking together.
right,
So that's kind of part of like the initiation. Usually you tend to partake in the same activities with the people that you fall in love with. I told you, like, black people don't go to therapy; they smoke weed.
okay,
You know what I'm saying? From that era
Mhm.
specifically, like
Mhm.
we're dealing with a new generation, like my daughter's generation, and the people older than her, like the people that are like my sisters, my youngest sister's age is like 25, down to my daughter about 15. Well, they're a new generation of therapy, you
Mhm.
know, through love. No, this generation, it's like, no, we link up together and we smoke and we talk about what's wrong. And if you get a connection with somebody and y'all start vibing, and really what he's explaining is that, you know, I saw a pretty girl and I do what dudes usually do around my way. And this is kind of the law. It's like, well, I asked her if she wanted to roll up with me and smoke one. We did. Turns out I really like her and we end up hitting it
Mhm.
off.
Yeah.
So that law that we live by, it's kind of tied back to that a little bit, you know?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Hmm. I was wondering if you were going to ask that because I was thinking about how marijuana is one of the connective tissues and threads of this song.
It does. Because he's if I heard the lyric right, he's like on one also while he's driving to the hospital too.
Hmm.
Like it
Hmm.
just like that's what he was doing when he got the page and or the beep
Yeah, he
and then
said
he's
I'm
like,
smoking
I don't he's
superstar.
like, I don't even care about the police officers being around. I'm trying to get to
Right,
my girl, right?
right.
Like,
I'm smoking blunts. I'm drinking booms and the whole nine.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. The smoking is part of it. So it's like when you're talking about well, where the love comes from, part of how we meet in this community in the inner city, the black
Hmm.
inner city, has always been through like smoke. Who got something? You know what I mean? That's
Okay.
where I got five on it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like who got money to go put in on something, and so we can all get together and smoke and vibe. And so in that setting is
Hmm.
where you usually make your friends. It's
Okay.
usually where you might meet your girlfriend. Right.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah.
Right. He's even telling her about how what she's smoking the wrong blunts. That's how he gets in with her. He's like, no, I used to smoke Philly blunts, but really they for silly stunts. And then he says, but later on, I can I would like to get to know you and I can show you. You know what I'm saying? That's
Mhm.
kind of how he got in. He gets in and showing it's like, no, 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 I don't roll those. I roll these. Right. So the marijuana and the whole process of even like what type of blunts or cigars you buy is part of the process. Because that's how he kind of snagged her.
That's
He
that's
snagged
that's a way to make conversation, right?
right.
Like it's just a
It's conversational. It's very much it's what would the kids call it, catching a vibe?
mhm. That's what they
Mhm.
did. I mean, it's very obvious. Like, and it's
You know what else I think about
hmm,
though? I'm sure you're familiar with it now. Teenage Love by Slick Rick.
yeah,
This is like the modern day version of that.
okay,
It's like that was like the more innocent 80s kind of like teeny bopper version. This is the more like hip hop gangster modern day version of Teenage Love.
okay.
It's it's that fall in love fast with the tragic ending. Romeo and
It's
Juliet,
the Romeo and
Teenage
Juliet
Love.
story. Yep.
Romeo and Juliet story. Yeah.
Hmm. Except without
Hmm.
the families fighting, but yeah,
Right. I'm about to say minus the whole Capulets and Montagues thing.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
But the crux of it, the core, that
Hmm.
hard, fast teenage love.
Yeah.
You know, it's been done.
And then she dies, and then he is ruined on love forever. Or that's the
Yeah.
story
Well,
that's how it works.
see, here's the thing about it is that we don't know if he's ruined on love forever. We just know that he's ruined for now.
Yeah. He's the only context we get, like I said earlier, is that he is comparing every other woman that he meets to her,
Right.
and none of them measure up. Like that's at least at this point in the song's life, the
See,
narrator's life.
so let's go to something. I did according to hip hop tonight, of course, because it's Friday
Hmm.
night. It's part of why my ass so dead ass tired. I've been sitting in this chair for the better part 5 or 6 hours now.
Yep.
Outside a couple of short breaks. But one of the things that we talked about is that part of the reason why Outkast's first album doesn't get held so high
Hmm.
is because, well, they immediately gave us products right after the first album that were comparable, if not better than. And so don't hold it in the same regard. Meanwhile, you have somebody like Black Star, whose first album gets held as a classic for 24 years
Hmm.
until they release their second album. And I keep telling people part of the reason why you think it's so great is because, well, you didn't hear it a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And so that rule kind of applies here. It's like you don't hear this a whole lot.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sort of, yeah. I'm following. I'm tired too, but like,
Right.
say more if you can.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that this style of song is more special because it really doesn't get made anymore.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's more special because it doesn't get made anymore. It's hard to think of a love song to compare it to that doesn't come from this era.
Hmm. Yeah,
You know?
I don't. I mean, obviously, I don't know as much hip hop as you do, but like, I don't know many love songs. And this,
Yeah. You didn't
like,
know
I
this?
can see how this is a love song. It's a tragic love song, but it's still um
Yeah.
respectful and loving. It's interesting to have the context to it, though.
See, and you want to know one of the things that I thought about the context of the songs is that,
Mhm.
well, at the end of this song, you don't know what's going to happen with this guy. It feels kind of hopeless for him. And on the other side, you have the Beach Boys, where he's literally telling her during the hook, well, it's like literally saying, well, if you're not here, I'm still going to be okay. And I'm thinking, well, how loving is this song exactly?
Yeah, it's a very interesting lyric.
It is because it feels loving, but how
Yeah,
loving is what he's saying. I kind of want to go through the rest of your notes if you have any about
the first note I have is the name of the band or the group is the Lost Boys, which are which actually that does fit because I mean you know this the Lost Boys are the Peter Pan's
Mhm.
boys from Neverland. Actually, coming back around to actual Neverland, where it comes from. They would have the modern version of that was in popular culture at the time of the song was Hook with that had Dustin Hoffman and Robin Williams and um
Mhm.
was a version of Peter Pan where
Mhm.
you know this where Peter's grown
No,
up
I remember.
and he goes back to Neverland and um but the Lost Boys are a group of orphan troublemakers or pranksters who never wanted to grow up,
No,
which
this is very much who the Lost Boys are in hip hop. They're from Queens. Because here's the thing, for their time, they were the party starters. Like their
okay.
music, they were
Yeah,
very.
they're
You want?
from South Jamaica. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Okay,
Yeah.
they're from
You're
South
right.
Jamaica. I felt like they were Queens. So okay, so you have to let's look at when Renee is coming out, which is 1995. Okay,
Hmm.
so in 1995 in Queens, you have Mobb Deep and Nas running stuff.
Right.
So the Lost Boys are doing stuff like Music Makes Me High, Lex Jeeps, Coops, Beamers, and the Benz, Renee. So they are kind of like the party starters. They're the
Okay.
fun guy. Yeah, Mr. Cheeks is a party starter. Freaky Ty, like their whole thing is to get it crunk. You know what I'm saying? When you go back and listen to their stuff, they're definitely party starters for their times. I would think of them kind of like think of Naughty by Nature a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. 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 That makes
They have a
sense.
great front man. Mr. Cheeks is a great front man, just like Tretch is a great front man. I still
Hmm.
think Tretch is better than Mr. Cheeks. But really, guys that are known more for starting the party than maybe like making like the greatest albums in the world.
Okay.
But Renee is probably Mr. Cheeks' best written song. And Mr. Cheeks is one of those guys that's kind of gotten underrated and understated as a songwriter because he came out in the same time with a Nas, a
Hmm.
Wu Tang Clan, a Biggie, a Jay Z, a
And
Pop.
like the all
Like
timers.
the
Yeah.
all timers are all around, and so it's easy to for somebody like Mr. Cheeks and the Lost Boys to get lost in the sauce. But this is their moment, and if I'm not mistaken, Renee was on a soundtrack too, which kind of like helped. Yeah, it's on the album Legal Drug Money, but it's also on the Don't Be a Menace soundtrack.
Okay.
There it is. I knew it was on something else. Renee's one of the best hip hop love songs ever. There are some people that preferred Renee over Method Man and Mary J. Blige's "I'll Be There for You" at the time, but it's definitely one of the greatest hip hop love songs ever, and it might be the one that's rooted most in the reality of our tenuous uh, falling. Part of what happens in our community oftentimes too is that we fall in love really fast and really hard because of
Hmm.
things that we have at home when we're growing up.
Okay.
And I think this song is also a microcosm of that. And it's funny because it's like she passed away, but oftentimes when people in my community fall in love and fast, it's hard. And I've seen it happen before. They usually get pregnant way too soon too. You
Hmm.
know, and so it's like I kind of like the fact that he kind of took it down a different route as a
Right.
narrator. Because in the
Okay.
real reality of it, that type of love usually ends up in teenage pregnancy real soon in my community.
Hmm.
Can't speak for other communities. I'm not saying so. Not trying to say it just happens in my community, of course. But
Right.
could tell you just personal stories on West Boulevard and Beatty's Ford of people that I knew, that I went to school with, and that we went to school with. They got together fast, and before we knew it, it was like boom, boom, bam. It's like up their parents. It's like damn. It's like, well, we graduate in 2 years. I don't know if they're going to be making it with us because they got other responsibilities now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a beautiful record. Black Love is tenuous.
There are things about it that echo other songs I can't quite place. It might be a Wu-Tang thing, it might be a DMX thing. Like there's that interval that he does where he says "Give it up for my shorty," like that I can't do it obviously, but like that interval between those two notes, the shorty, whatever, like that's either somebody has taken it from them or they took it from somebody. Like I recognize it from somewhere else.
DMX does kind of like have a vocal inflection like that at times. See, that's the thing. Okay, so I don't know if that's taken from anywhere or anybody in particular, you know, because it's like, well, I could tell you that shortly thereafter, because this song is 1996. Well, I could tell you by 1998, 1999, DMX and Ja Rule have kind of taken this a little bit, but not intentionally. It just kind of falls into the vein of the guys that they are too. Because here's the thing about it: well, Ja Rule's from that same part of Queens that the Boys are from. He's from Southside Jamaica, Queens. Yeah. Well, not exactly Southside Jamaica, but he's from similar
general
area.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just influences from the area. That's what I'm saying. Guys sound like guys. Like a lot of people forget that it's like, well, Nas early on sounded like Cool G Rap and Tragedy Gaddafi. It's like, well, where are those guys from? Well, Tragedy Gaddafi is literally like grew up like 6 blocks from Nas, and Cool G Rap's from Corona, Queens. He's from Queensbridge. He's literally in the studio. Like Large Professor is who helped bring Nas in the game. Large Professor is also who executive produced Cool G Rap's 2 best albums. So it's like, well, who you expecting Nas to sound like?
Yep.
You know?
Not everybody from there sounds the same, but like, yeah, I mean, you're going to sound like the people you grow up around. Like that's just
and what you're influenced by, and also too what you're vocally capable of. Because here's the thing too, Mr. Cheeks has this thing with his voice that very few people can pull off. You got to have a special kind of throaty, kind of gravelly voice.
That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. Yeah.
Well, DMX and Ja Rule have that, and so when they use the same verbiage, it may come off the same way, but it's not an intentional bite. It's just they have the ability to pull off the same cadence that vocally a lot of other rappers can't. All these rappers use the word shorty some sort of way, especially around then. It just sounds a certain type of way when DMX and Ja Rule say it, because they can say it in that gritty and kind of gravelly way that Cheeks could.
And I didn't want to have that come across like I'm saying like somebody's stealing something from somebody. Like most of those kind of things are like in honor of, like they're like, it's like giving a shout out to the people. Like he also says don't sweat the technique in there too. Like he also, I didn't know if that's just a thing that people said or if he was shouting out Rakim specifically or what.
No,
but like,
that's part of why Rakim is who he is that his verbiage is part of other rappers' lexicon. When he's saying don't sweat the technique, hey shorty, I do the same thing. No, we say don't sweat the technique now because Rakim made the song.
Right. That's what I thought. I thought it was just like a hat tip to him, like just to.
It's not. No, it's the ultimate hat tip because it's an unintentional hat tip. Rakim is so important that his verbiage and the songs that he made and the things that he did is literally part of the generational lexicon of words that get used. So he's not intentionally shouting out Rakim. It's one of those things that happens when you're growing up in Southside Jamaica, Queens, and Rakim is making Paid in Full and Follow the Leader right up. You know what I'm saying? Well, you're going to end up.
You're going to end up using those words. Yeah, sure.
You know, well, he's considered to be, even in this is 1996. He's still the greatest MC of all time in 1996. Right. So using his lingo or his jargon and verbiage is still cool. He's still the greatest MC of all time. So when you're saying don't sweat the technique, it's like, well, don't sweat the technique came out in 1990, 91. That's part of New Yorkers' lingo now because Rakim said it.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
So it's like the ultimate head nod. It's not even an intentional head nod. It's how he's talking.
This is actually a really cool place to connect the dots between this one and God Only Knows / Pet Sounds.
I hope you're thinking what I'm thinking. Go ahead.
Because Pet Sounds was made and the song was made in response to the Beatles' Rubber Soul. Like that's they had I guess you could call it friendly competition in the 60s between the Beatles and the Beach Boys. The Beach Boys were the only like American band that was like studio technically proficient enough to hang with the Beatles. So you had Rubber Soul, which is Michelle, and not got to get you into my life, just a song called In My Life, and lots of other famous songs too. That was this was about the time the Beatles stopped performing publicly. Um,
Mm,
and so like at the Rubber Soul Revolver Sergeant Pepper area, which is 66, 67, they stopped performing live and became kind of a studio creation band.
mm-hmm.
Um, and so the order of operations, sort of so to speak, there's Rubber Soul. I think I wrote this down. No.
Okay.
Rubber Soul was early 66, late 65, I believe. And Revolver is May 66, and Pet Sounds happens in between them. Um, Revolver is Eleanor Rigby and Got to Get You Into My Life and Here, There, and Everywhere, and
Yes.
okay, um,
Yes.
tons of other songs. Like it's one of those songs that one of those records that is generally, I think it's probably the one that's most commonly named as the best album, rock and roll album of all time. Revolver.
It's the one that always ranks the highest, the most
Yeah.
consistently, no matter the list. Yes.
And that's
That and
because
Sergeant Pepper.
it's one of those with no fat on it at all. Like every single song is great. And so you have Rubber Soul, then you have Pet Sounds that the Beach Boys kind of response to that. And then you have Revolver, and then Brian the Beach Boys are three brothers plus a cousin.
Yeah.
So um Brian Wilson is like the maestro, I guess.
Yeah.
He's the main songwriter. He is the primary lyricist. He's not the only one, but like he's the one that's and he's also trying to produce the records too. And so after Revolver, they start with an album called Smile, which is the album that Good Vibrations comes from,
Mm-hmm.
among other
Oh,
things.
I'm familiar. I just like how you're chronologicalizing it for me because that's the part that I didn't know. Because when you said this is a good time to segue, I was like, I hope you're going to talk about this Beatles comparison. I say because Pet sounds like they're responding to the Beatles
They
shit.
are, absolutely they are.
I just don't know where they're responding and what
Mm-hmm.
album they're responding to. Because I mean, when you're listening to the vocals and the songwriting, I'm like, oh, they're competing with the Beatles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're one of the only groups that, and in the same way that the Beatles harmonies and stuff are built around primarily Paul McCartney and John Lennon, like having known each other since they were like 11, 12 years old,
The brothers,
and playing together forever. And the three
right,
brothers obviously have known each other for their whole life too.
right, right. So
And you
that
know
would
this, like there's not any way around the fact that siblings or family members' harmonies sound different when they're singing together. They just do. They not just the Beach Boys, but like they fit together in a way that it's hard to replicate unless you've
it
been doing it
almost feels like it's what God intended when
right.
it happened.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, but anyway, let me
Exactly what you're
finish
talking
this
about.
whole timeline right quick. The
Yeah.
Brian Wilson has a nervous breakdown trying to record Smile because he can't make it the way he wants it. Like he can't
It's not as good as
like
Revolver.
he can hear it in his head, but he can't make the studio do the
Not as
thing that
good
he
as
can hear.
Revolver.
So he has a nervous breakdown. That's memorialized um lots of places. And there's a documentary about it. They finally released the Smile Sessions, the album, in like 2010 or 11. They finally finished it. But
So it never came
there's
out.
a song by a band called the Bare Naked Ladies that came out in the 90s called Brian Wilson. The hook
No, I
is
remember that song.
lying in bed just like Brian Wilson did. Yeah. It's um so it's calling back to that. And then so you have Smile, which I mean, they released Good Vibrations as a single about then, but they didn't release the whole album. And then you had Sergeant Pepper. So um
Oh, so did they release Smile the album?
not in the 60s they didn't. No.
So they
They
just
did
released
in like much
Vibration.
later, like 2010, 2011.
So they just released Good Vibrations.
Right. Just
Song.
that song. Yeah.
And then Sergeant Pepper's came out. So
Mm-hmm.
the Beatles have made Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sergeant Pepper in between just Pet Sounds.
Around Pet Sounds, yeah. And then Good Vibrations. They're starting to make another one too, but yeah.
They're losing this battle terribly.
No. I have said this on this show before, but like the run that the Beatles went on from 65 to 1970, which is Rubber Soul, Revolver, Sergeant Pepper, Magical Mystery Tour, White Album, Abbey Road, and Let It Be, is the greatest 5-year run of any band ever.
Only 5 years we did all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Like
nobody else has any other evidence like that. Not like that. Not no.
Mm-mm. That's like
I mean,
that's 6, 7, 8 classics
no,
in a row.
I mean, Revolve. I mean, just for me, what I'm familiar with it, I know of Revolver, Sergeant Pepper's, White Album, Abbey Road, and Let It Be is enough to pretty much take everybody else off the board.
Mm-hmm. Magical Mystery Tour is kind of a soundtrack, kind of soundtrack to a movie that they made. And
I know about the movie, not familiar with that album as much as I am.
That you're familiar with the songs though, because that's it took a lot of the. It wasn't an album in the same kind of way, but they took a lot of the singles that they had been putting out and put them together on an album. So that's Blue Jay Way, that's Penny Lane, that's Strawberry Fields Forever, that's Baby You're a Rich Man, that's I Am the Walrus, that's
some of my favorite shit. I'm the Walrus.
Hello Goodbye, that's
yeah,
All You Need Is Love.
Shit, that's all. Yeah. That's all my shit. I love that shit. That's some of my Hello Goodbye, Strawberry Fields, I Am Walrus. Yeah, no, that's some of my
that's Magical Mystery Tour. Yeah.
Oh shit, I need to listen to that. That's some of my favorite
stuff,
shit.
Man.
Yeah, Strawberry Fields, Hello Goodbye. Yeah, that's some of my favorite stuff they did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I told you Strawberry Fields is like the first pothead song that like I heard like for pop music. It's like I was like, no, that's definitely some like dope shit.
They were getting pretty heavy into some stuff at that point.
Yeah,
like in 67,
it was like, man, I was like,
67, 68.
Marijuana, yeah, that's mushrooms, marijuana, and cocaine. That's what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Pet Sounds is really their response to Rubber Soul.
Mm-hmm. Okay. It falls between Rubber Soul and Revolver. Yeah.
Okay. And so what do you think about this record? Is this the biggest
what, Pet Sounds?
Yeah. No, about this song and about the album Pet Sounds. Yeah.
It isn't as poppy as any of the Beatles albums are. I mean, this song, I mean, the other connection obviously is that Paul McCartney has said his favorite non-Beatles song that's ever been written is this one, God Only Knows.
Oh really? He said that?
Yeah. So
well, you want to know why? Because it sounds like something he would have wrote, the cocky, arrogant, right? It sounds like
but also it's like,
am I wrong though? Doesn't it?
No, you're not wrong at all. It's one of those things where you're like,
it's almost like they're singing in his pitch too. That's his
like,
pitch.
It's one of, like you think the best songs are like shit, I wish I wrote that. Like, I wish I had that. Like, that's because the lyric of the song, I mean, McCartney is not known, and despite his songwriting genius, like as the greatest lyricist of all time. That's not his his lyrics tend to drift towards what you would call what you use the phrase you use is simple stupid. Like that's, but he's one of the greatest of all time at doing that. But and the lyrics of God Only Knows are not really that intricate either. The next episode we're going to do, we get to talk about like seriously intricate lyrics, but this one is not really that. And this is still one of the Beach Boys' most intricate albums, lyrically speaking. Like the songs that they're famous for before this are like Ba 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 Bran, right? Or Surfing USA, or Wish They All Could Be California Girls, or Do You Love Me, Little Surfer Girl?
All that hippie shit.
Yeah, Daddy Took the T-Bird Away. All right. I mean, all of those are, I mean, they're doing what you would call it surf music.
Yeah, that hippie shit, that like 60s California, like hippie music. Yes.
Yeah.
They're the authors of that, right?
Yeah, they're the authors of like the beach music, hippie music. Yeah, like where I think of hippie music, I'm thinking of like the Grateful Dead and Jefferson Airplane and stuff like that. Stuff that comes out is coming out of San Francisco primarily.
Okay,
Um,
that's different
Beach
than this.
Boys is SoCal stuff.
Right. How
It's
about this?
LA, it's Santa Barbara, it's
Yeah,
like that kind of
yeah. This
um
Irvine, this OC. Right.
driving around with the tops down kind of. It's that kind of music before. So this album is a huge departure from that. I mean, it's clearly the same kind of harmonies, but it's way more intricate than the others are. This has like jazz stuff almost in it too. Like the chords are like I don't know what to call them really because I'm not a jazz musician particularly, but like the song structures are much more complicated on
You
Pet
think
Sounds.
you talking about like the actual composition of the
Right.
music? The musical composition is more complex. It's more written in a jazz format where you're literally reading the music as opposed to like your traditional standard musical recording
Hmm.
format. So they're still recording. You know what they're doing? They're taking the live nuance of recording
Hmm.
and bringing it into the studio in terms of the composition of it. It's still free flowing.
Yeah.
It's more like sheet music and orchestra music, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. He's you know the story that you've told on here about watching Bruce Springsteen in the studio and that kind of obsessiveness of
Right.
trying playing the same thing over
Yeah.
and over. That's what this album is, and that's what Brian Wilson is, and that's what
Yep.
he drove himself crazy on the next album trying to do it again. Um,
No.
because I mean it's the same as the stick, right? I mean it's like I hear something in my head and I can't make the what I hear on the recording sound like what I hear in my head. And Pet Sounds is the closest he ever comes to accomplishing that. And I would argue the song is probably the closest they ever come to accomplishing that. So, like the lyric is confusing. You touched on that at the very beginning of what we were talking about. Like I may not always love you, but
Right.
as long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. And God only knows what I'd be without you. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's I tend to read that first because that first line contradicts the rest of it. I may not always love you, but as long as there are stars above you, like I tend to read that as like we not I don't want to be morbid about it, but we may die sometime. Who knows what's going to happen in the future, kind of thing. But everything that I have any control over, I'm not going to end
See,
it.
okay. So here's the juxtaposition between the songs. Is that
Hmm.
okay? See, I think because of the socioeconomics, see, Cheeks is moving with a sense of urgency about his lady.
Hmm.
Because where there's not time, there's not money. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
And as opposed to the perspective, I don't know if even privilege is the word. I don't think that's fair. As opposed the perspective of somebody that's more well-to-do and how they look at love.
Hmm.
And I think what we see is this where the socioeconomics come into play. Those who are more well to do have a more laissez faire and interchangeable and replaceable concept of love than those who come from more financially strapped circumstances, in my opinion. And that's what I
Hmm.
hear in the records. It's like, well, and that's about the love happening fast too. It's like some of that is the socioeconomics taking a hold because,
Hmm.
well, it's so rough because of the socioeconomics. As soon as you find somebody who you want to be with, well, you can get to where you want to go faster. Well, when you're already kind of where you want to be, you might look at love differently.
Hmm.
You know?
And even like the context of the Lost Boys song, like the inner city Queens, New York, as opposed to the context of the Beach Boys music generally, which is surfing USA on the beach at Santa Barbara, kind of um, that that's about as far apart as you can get. Like it's and in many ways, this song is to touch on what you just said. Um, it's talking about an eternal timeline, right? He's not talking about like our short lives. We got to get it while the getting's good. He's talking about like this is a forever thing, and not just a during this lifetime forever thing. And that's what part of why it says God only knows what I'd be where I'd be without you, right? It's he's talking about something perhaps greater or longer term than just this time frame.
Hmm. It's almost like she's not going to be the only girl that he feels this way about.
Mm.
That's why I told you it's like, well, I know this song from Big Love because the song is ambiguous in nature
Yeah.
enough that it's like, well, it can fit the theme music to a polygamous themed show. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's like that's what I mean about it, kind of like that laissez-faire attitude. It's like the song is kind of saying it's like, well, I can love you and you and you. See, with the Lost Boys, with Renee, it's different. The song's called Renee.
Yeah, it's about her.
It's about
She is
Renee.
yeah.
See, so it's almost like, God don't. It's almost like, I hate to say this. This is like the preacher at my church is from Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
My pastor is from Detroit, and he tells me about some of his early church experiences. He shares with the congregation, and one of the things that he shares is about how, some of the elder members and deacons and guys in the church use the church and God to get women. This song kind of comes off that way.
Mm.
You know what I mean? It's almost like it's real. It's kind of it seems kind of innocent, but it kind of seems like really kind of slick player talk too, Andrew. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but yeah.
God only knows what I'd be without you. But you want to know what? And then he's like,
If you should ever leave me, life would still go on. Believe me, the world could show nothing to me, but so what good would live and do me? So I mean, there's lots of contradictions in these verses. Like he's just
real fly. That's real fly player talk, Andrew. Real fly player talk. God only knows what I'd be without you. But if you leave, I'm gonna be okay. Huh? That's what I heard. That's what I mean. Is
the
it's like,
interesting
oh,
part is that. Go ahead.
No, that's what I mean. Is like the love is different. It's just like this almost is like, how about this? Brian Wilson wasn't like the lead singer of the Beach Boys. He would be like the lead attorney of a law firm and have an affair with his secretary. Like he's that guy. That's what this song is to me, like on another level when I hear the socioeconomics of it come out to play. Because it's like, oh no, you can fall in love with anybody.
It makes an interesting juxtaposition with the other one. Like, so because the other one, he's still stuck. At least in the song, he's still stuck.
Right. And it sounds more beautiful. Like, think about it. God only knows. It sounds more beautiful than Renee. But when you think about it, it's really not.
The sentiment's
like,
not.
The sentiment's not. It's like Renee, even though it's depressing and the ending isn't what you would like, and it's in the tenuous socioeconomic circumstances, that's the real beautiful love story. Yeah. This guy's is like,
this one just sounds beautiful, right?
This one just sounds beautiful. Like I said, it's beautiful enough that Paul McCartney is probably thinking to himself, I can sing that better than them.
He probably could, honestly.
I mean, I didn't. He probably could. It's neither here nor there. But that's part of why he loves the song, because when I'm hearing, I'm like, oh, well, John and Paul could have sung this, right?
Yeah,
easily.
Yeah,
and they know it too when they heard it. So,
yeah. But that was we talked. You've talked about on both According to Hip Hop and on this show about making your competitors and colleagues go back into the lab to up their game. That's what happened. That's what happened.
What's supposed to happen? That's what's supposed to happen.
And it was a friendly between the two of them anyway. It was between them. It was a friendly competition. You listen to the record and like, holy man, like this is great stuff. Let me go try and see. Let me do my version of this or do my.
Because the Beach Boys are making different style of music before this, like you were saying, correct?
Yeah. Pet Sounds is very different.
It was really that Surfing USA kind of like barbershop quartet-ish kind of music is what they were making before, and then they started becoming artists with this album, right? Yeah, that's kind of the feeling, the vibe that I got from it too, because it still has this album. Because I remember Pet Sounds, it still has that barbershop quartet-ish vibe, but it's like they're growing up.
No, the chords they're using are jazz chords too. A lot of them instead of the 1-3-5 kind of chords that you would normally find in barbershop quartets. And there's kind of the first song on the album is called "Wouldn't It Be Nice," and and it's kind of a statement of intent because it has kind of a noodling keyboard kind of thing at the very beginning, kind of fading in, and then you have that like where that like one
And
snap drums like crack, and then he goes, "What wouldn't it be nice if we were right?" So, um, that's the one. That's also the song that sounds the most like the Beach Boys, but it's also, um, like you said, a more mature version. And then when you
yeah,
get to this song, this song is near the end of the album actually,
right.
and you're like, oh, these guys are on some different stuff now. Like this is a whole different thing.
Yeah, this is a different wave, literally.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts about these two records or about
One of the things I love about this show is that like it helps me see things that I didn't see before in
Mhm.
these
Me
songs,
too.
like especially in God Only Knows, which I've heard thousands of times, um, and it's always cool to be able to see things through other people's eyes, and see what people who don't have my lived experiences bring to them,
Mhm.
and and be introduced to new songs too that I didn't know before.
You want to know what's funny?
Mm,
And I'm not saying this, and I don't know if it's just part of the institution of America being a predominantly white country.
mm,
But one of the things that's been startling to me is how many of your songs I'm familiar with already, some sort of way.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I'd say about 80% of the songs that we've covered, Andrew, I'm familiar with. And not familiar with it's like, oh, I've heard it a time or two. It's like, oh no, I know the exact song that you're talking about.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? The exact song. But then I think about it's like, well, we're also doing it a juxtaposition of a hip hop song. And hip hop is literally only about 8 years older than you and I.
Right.
In terms in
And these many of the songs we've talked about are from like the 60s too.
right.
So
I was about to say, and as far as the recording of hip hop records, well, the recording of hip hop records is literally as old as us.
mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's
Sugar
early 80s, yeah.
80, 81, 79. That's
Mm-hmm.
literally around the time we're being born. And so we're juxtaposing things that have existed on record
Mm-hmm.
on average, I'd say 30 to 40 years
Right.
ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So, we're dealing with a time gap too. And that's one of the beautiful things. It's like the time gap in the music, but the themes being similar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we can take a Beach Boys song from what, 1965?
66, I think, but yeah.
66. So we could take a Beach Boys song from 1996 and compare it to a Lost Boys song from 1996.
Yep. Exactly.
That's the beautiful part. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that one of the ideas that I really wanted to get at in this show is that human, regardless of situation, um, much of human emotion is universal. Like we have maybe how it's expressed is different as we see in these songs, but like love and jealousy and anger and passion and sadness and like all of those things,
Mhm.
there are things that all songwriters and all artists are like trying to express because they are things that happen to everybody in some
Yes.
way. So,
Love is one of those things.
mm-hmm.
Definitely. Can't hide love, like Earth, Wind, and Fire said. You can't. You can't hide it. It's everywhere. It's going to be on the Beach Boys album in 1966. It's going to be on the Lost Boys album in 1996. That's California. Look, that's like Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
That's, South Jamaica, Queens, in New York, East Coast, West
Yep,
Coast, 66, 96. Love is love is love.
is love.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think that's a good place to,
that's a great place to stop.
great
And
place
we'll
to stop.
stop it.
Yeah.